Welcome to this session. It's called Civic Courage, You Can Make a Difference. And it's, as some of you have already gathered, a conversation with the founder of Results, Sam Daley-Harris. And he'll be talking about the 2024 edition of his book, Reclaiming Our Democracy. I'm just going to read from a bio from Sam here. Sam founded Results in the US in the 1980s and launched the first 20 chapters of Results in the UK in the mid 1980s. So pretty good size there. Sam co-founded the Microcredit Summit campaign in 1995, founded Civic Courage in 2012, and coached the Citizens Climate Lobby in its first 7 years. And the 2024 edition of his book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy, was released just in January. As he writes in the book, Reclaiming Our Democracy provides a way to make a difference and heal our democracy in the process. It's not the only solution needed, but it's one essential missing piece, which is citizens awakening to their power. And it'll be my absolute pleasure to ask Sam to speak just in a minute. I'm going to, for the one or two people on the call who are, I know, newer to Results, we're an international development advocacy organization, and our aim is to generate the political will to aim poverty by enabling people to exercise their own personal and political power for change. As you've heard, Results came to the UK in the mid 1980s, and we're still here. And many of that network of volunteers are on this call today, which is just wonderful to have you all here. And we're all really looking forward to hearing Sam's observations on how this activity that we're all involved with has changed since he first started being active in civil participation. So I'm not going to tread on Sam's toes by saying any more than that, but just welcome Sam to the call. I'm going to hand over to him. And Sam, it's an absolute delight to have you here. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Okay, great. And thank you, Naveed. And thanks to each one of you. I'm so honored to be with you. I want to say a couple of things. Then I'm going to show a few slides and I'm going to come off the slides. When I talk, this is probably the 20th talk I've done since February. When I talk and you hear that what I'm saying is what you're already doing, just take my words as an acknowledgement of what you're up to. Some of us will maybe say, wow, I could stretch a little further. And so take that as an encouragement to stretch a little further. I'm going to say one other thing, and I'm going to share my first two slides. The previous edition of the book, 12 chapters were removed that were in the previous edition, and 7 new chapters or sections were put in. I'm going to start with 2 slides, and then I'm going to come off of them. I have had the honor of being interviewed on national radio in the United States. I've been interviewed on, like, this was a radio show that goes to 350 stations. I was working from South Florida. That was one station that went to 5 million listeners. They don't all listen, but it had that kind of coverage. And I've been so moved by how vulnerable these American radio hosts have been. And I want to read 2 of the questions. This was question number 2 on a US national public radio show called 1A. And the interviewer said, the passive nature to our politics now, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. It's much more of an effort for me. I don't participate in the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I know you know that. What am I feeling? What's the way out of that? I'm not an activist, but you know what I'm saying. I was so moved that he was so honest in his question. Actually, just for I never don't usually do this, but I'm gonna take a little extra time. My first 2 things that I said to him were, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, "We aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth, we're the crew." Well, are we? And if we're crew, how does crew operate? And then gave a quote from a US futurist and climate activist, Alex Steffen, who said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Well, yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are, and I'm not going to do anything. Why would I if nothing I do makes a difference and I'm cynical about it? This is another show. It's called Here and Now. It goes to 400 stations around the United States. And Deepa Fernandez asked this question. She said, one of the things I found really insightful in your book, you say, to move from passively caring about something, say the environment, climate change, these big things that are actually happening in our lives, to actually taking action, we have to, and I'm quoting from you here in your book, be honest about the hopelessness that's in all of us. I found that really struck a chord with me, Sam, because the issues we do care about sometimes seem massive and immutable. How do we move past that sense of hopelessness? So I'm just basically saying that I've been very moved by how vulnerable these national uh, public radio hosts in the United States have been with their questions and so on, honest about their feelings. One of the ideas in the book is it's important to know your why and share it. Why do you do what you do? And this is really taken from Harvard professor Marshall Gans, who developed the story of self. And the story of self basically asks, what happened in your life and what decision did you make that got you to this commitment? And I urge everyone to think about your story of self and write it if you haven't yet, and share it if you don't very often. I'm going to share a shortened version of my story of self, and it goes like this. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years, and I taught high school music. And then 44 years ago, I founded the Anti-Poverty Lobby Results. And a lot of times I'm asked, music poverty lobby, what's the connection? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation in 1968 and the assassination of US Senator Robert Kennedy around high school graduation was in 64, and the assassination of Robert Kennedy around college graduation was in 1968. And these two deaths got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger is inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I mean, I'm thinking it's inevitable because, in my mind, there are no solutions, because I'm thinking if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and it's really obvious right away. There's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature, people will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from the US National Academy of Sciences, Food and Nutrition Study, and others calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote them. I don't want to know if you met them, just the name. And I guess some of you know the story. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. 6,800 could not tell me the name of their member of Congress, and results grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other hand. And so I'm going to do the big idea in the book, and then I'm going to go back to my slides. So the big idea in the book is transformational advocacy. And I make the distinction between the advocacy most people know, transactional, sign the petition, transaction complete, and the much less known transformational advocacy, where you're trained, encouraged, and then succeed at doing things as an advocate that you never thought you could do, like bring your member of parliament on board to your issue. And then as a result, you see yourself in a new light. You see yourself as a community leader. A transformation has taken place. And so that's essentially what the book is about. I'm going to give you some US statistics right now, and I want you to decide whether this is very American and no, Britain, we've got it all handled. So there's that one. Sorry. So as I say, we're not getting the training and support we need to engage in transformational advocacy. In the US, there was a survey by the independent sector, which found only 31% of nonprofits were engaging in advocacy or lobbying over the last 5 years, and 31% was less than half of those that were doing it 20 years ago. So there's fewer organizations doing advocacy, but it gets worse. There was a survey by the Congressional Management Foundation. Listen to this. 79% of advocacy professionals said that a form email, give me your name and your zip code, and we'll send a letter for you. 79% of advocacy professionals said that a form email was their primary grassroots advocacy tactic, but only 3% of congressional staff said that a form email has a lot of influence on their office's decisions. The last data point is 94% of congressional staff said that in-person issue visits from constituents, in-person issue visits from constituents would have some or a lot of influence on their decisions, which of course is what transformational advocacy is all about. And by and large, citizens generally are not getting the training and support they need to engage in transformational advocacy. I'm going to tell some stories about some volunteers. And this first one is Maxine Thomas. That's Maxine, and she's with her US Senator Todd Young, a Republican of Indiana. And Maxine said, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. Maxine is someone with a lived experience of poverty, and she joined a group called Circles for people who are committed to moving out of poverty. And her group realized that they had a story to tell, and they looked around and to find an organization that could help tell their story, and they found Results, and Maxine and the others joined Results, and eventually she gets a scholarship to go to the Results conference in Washington, D.C. She borrows luggage to go there, and the night before her first ever meetings with senators and representatives, she learns that the earned income tax credit was about to expire. And the earned income tax credit goes to low income working families. In 2020, it was about $3,100 to a low income family. So then she goes to her first meeting. These slides are from the book. This is a reading from the book. The first congressional meeting on Lobby Day was with Senator Dan Coates, Republican of Indiana, and brought new ahas. He was there for the entire meeting. I can still feel it. I was a ball of emotions. It felt like an out of body experience. I was processing being in DC, and now I'm in an exclusive meeting. We're all dressed up. It was high level. The volunteers were polished and sharp, but I was scared. That's normal at the first meeting, but I was scared and whether I would say the right thing. I think it was Lisa who asked me, "Would you like to say anything?" I thanked the senator and said, "I learned last night why I'm here. I didn't know I could come here from Indianapolis to talk to you, someone who represents us and can help us. I can't imagine what will happen if the earned income tax credit is taken away from families like mine. I'm able to take a deep breath and catch up on my bills because of the earned income tax credit. I look forward to tax time because that's the only time I can handle my financial burden. I like to take my kids to the mall to buy shoes without worrying if it will take away from other bills." Senator Coates straightened himself up and said, "Wow, this has been emotional. Results, you do a good job of training people. Where did you find her?" And then he thanked me. That was the year he retired. He was very connected, even though it wasn't on his radar. He acknowledged my voice and thanked me for being there. End of quote from the book. After a full day of lobbying her other senator and representatives, she said, quote, "I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary." That's a far cry from feeling hopeless and cynical. Um, so that's transformational advocacy. How do you find an organization that's committed to delivering transformational advocacy? What do you look for? So these are the three things that I've identified. One, recruitment and building community, bringing new people in, not to build an e-blast list only, but real people talking to real people and forming them into chapters. That's recruitment. And building community is like an all of organization webinar with guest speakers, Q&A, inspiration. So recruitment and building community. Does the organization do that? Two, training. How do you get the meeting with an elected official? How do you plan for the meeting? What are the asks at the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Three, encourage breakthroughs. The organization encourages their members to move out of their comfort zone because confidence grows and transformation happens when you're encouraged and supported in doing things you thought you couldn't do. There's a drawing in the book with a small circle labeled your comfort zone, and to the right is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens. You're not looking for an organization that'll kick you out, but encourage you out of your comfort zone over to where the magic happens. I'm going to tell another story. This one's on global poverty. In 2019, Results UK was fully part of this whole process. This is from the other side of the ocean. In 2019, President Trump called for a 29% cut to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria after it had saved 38 million lives since its launch in 2002. It was time for the Global Fund's 3-year replenishment, and other countries would likely follow the US lead. So I'm going to say this the way I say it to others. In the United States, most people didn't know that the president called for a 29% cut to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And if they did know, most people would throw up their hands. What can you do? You can't fight City Hall. But the people I know, like you, rolled up their sleeves and they got hundreds of members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, to co-sponsor resolutions in the House and Senate supporting the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and sign letters of support to the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and to the lead appropriators in the House and Senate. So, what do these revolutionary volunteer advocates look like? Well, you should go to Gallery View if you want to know what these revolutionary volunteer advocates look like. But they also look like Margaret Smith, seen here holding her Senator Ted Cruz's hands with two hands. She said, I learned in results that I hold Senator Cruz's hands with two hands and I don't let go until I've finished my laser talk on the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And in fact, that was the first year that Senator Cruz ever said yes to a request made by results volunteers. He was a co-sponsor of the Senate resolution. So instead of President Trump's proposed 29% cut, two House Republicans and two House Democrats stood on a stage in Lyon, France, at the Global Fund replenishment and announced that the Congress would provide a 16% increase to the Global Fund instead of the 29% cut. And in fact, that's what was signed into law. And by 2022, the end of the 3-year replenishment, the Global Fund partnership had saved 59 million lives since its inception in 2002. Now, I'm going to do one other thing right now, and I'm going to do a short reading. And it's a reading from a book, Race Against Time, Searching for Hope in AIDS-Ravaged Africa. The book was a series of lectures in 2005, 3 years after the Global Fund was launched, by Stephen Lewis, Canadian, who was the UN Secretary General's Special AIDS Envoy for AIDS in Africa. AIDS was ravaging Africa at this time. And in this part of the excerpt that I'm going to read, which is really about why do people work on this? This is Stephen Lewis talking about going with Gracia Michel, the wife of the late Nelson Mandela, to visit a sibling-headed household in Uganda. The parents had both died of AIDS, and there were no other relatives around. So this family of 5 children was headed by the oldest, which is a 14-year-old daughter. And when I started sharing this, my own son was 11 and my daughter was 8. So very much the ages of the kids in this story. In this fourth story, Stephen Lewis talks about how he and Gracia Michel, the wife of Nelson Mandela, are taken to a sibling-headed household in Uganda. Quote, there were 5 children in all, 3 girls, 14, 12, and 10, and 2 boys, 11 and 8. We entered the modest hut with our backs to the wall. Gracia, with her arm around the 3 girls on her right, and I with my arm around the 2 boys on my left. Gracia then told all the hangers-on to leave, all the media, all the UN staff, except for 1 community worker and 1 translator. I had no idea what was coming. Gracia turned to the 2 older girls and in a most general, reassuring voice asked, have you started to menstruate yet? The 2 girls, clearly startled, replied in those shy, barely audible whispered voices so characteristic of African children, yes. Then Gracia began to ask a series of questions. Do you know what it means? Have you talked with anyone about it? Do you talk to the villagers about it? Your teachers, your fellow students? Does anyone bring you any pads? The atmosphere was intense. The little girls, now fully embraced in Gracia's arms, seemed to have suspended breathing, and I suddenly understood that I was witness to this first act of mothering that these girls had ever received about one of the most transfiguring experiences of a young girl's life. I've told this story a number of times because the experience had a profound impact on me. At the moment that Gracia asked her questions, I thought to myself, that's what's happening right across the continent. The transfer of love and knowledge and values and experience from one generation to the next is gone. And with it goes the confidence and security and sense of place, which children normally take for granted. Children already traumatized by the death of their parents are left reeling as they confront the void in the aftermath. As we were leaving, I asked the oldest sister, "Who puts you to bed at night?" "I put everyone to bed," she replied. "But bedtimes can be pretty scary," I offered. "The nights are dark. The dreams can be upsetting. Don't any of the neighbors come in to help?" "No," she said matter-of-factly. "I put them to bed myself. I'm the mother." End of quote. That's the 14-year-old. So that's why people like Margaret Smith and you, people on this call, would lobby for something like the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. This is my last story. This is a story about Ellie Sparks. Ellie Sparks was a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby when she was telling this story. She's now on staff. She said, "Before I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, I was suffering from climate trauma." She said, "I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home and I would weep at work." And then she joined CCL. And 18 months later, she was co-leading a workshop on creating relationships with members of Congress and editorial writers. She said, "Our executive director said, 'We're betting the farm on relationships. Now go get a relationship with your member of Congress.'" She said, "What in the world does a relationship with a member of Congress look like? And how do you get a relationship with an editorial writer?" So now this is Ellie speaking, excerpted from the book. I'm basically reading from the book. She said, "My relationship model is different. I adore romantic relationships, so I use romance as my model. That first meeting with the editorial writer, it's like a blind date, only you've decided beforehand you're going to marry this fellow. You're going to be sweet and interesting, not too intense. If it doesn't work out with the editor, you're going to marry one of his friends at the paper, the business editor, environment writer, city editor, someone at this paper will find you interesting and compelling. It's just a matter of being persistent until you find the right connection. I see the relationship with a member of Congress as an arranged marriage. If you live in her district, the member's aide has to meet with her, meet with you. That's what our congressperson's ledge director told us in January. This is now August of that year. Since January, we've met 5 times with the legislative director. We schedule 45-minute meetings. He keeps us for well over an hour. He doesn't want us to leave. Why? Because a good arranged marriage starts out cold and slowly heats up over time. That's different than a love match, which starts out hot and slowly cools down. And then Ellie shared the essence of transformational advocacy. She said, "During our conference, I met with 20 congressional offices over 4 days. I met with many folks whose view of the world was very different than mine. Going into their offices was hard. I had to let go of a lot of emotional baggage. I could no longer judge them or hold hostility in my heart toward them. I had to let go of my fear of climate change and my fear that they wouldn't listen to me. I had to center myself in love, releasing fear and centering in love. This is sacred and profound work." End of quote. Who thinks about political advocacy as being sacred and profound? Obviously, it can become that if you find the right organization and you open yourself up to it. So I'm just going to state my mission. My mission is to inspire nonprofit leaders to create and citizens to actively join structures of support that deliver transformational advocacy and propel participants to become powerful citizen advocates who joyfully make a profound difference in the world. I'm going to put a QR code up in a moment, and you can use it or the website that's actually under it uh, to order the book, to join the Civic Courage mailing list, I'm going to skip to 4. Let me know that you or a group you work with would like to host an author talk. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to close with this, and then I'll put the QR code up and we're done. This is from George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman. I'm going to read this twice. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature, instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world would not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. This is you. I'm going to repeat it. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature, instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. End of quote. Thank you for your commitment to making that torch burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. So this is the QR code, and the website is right underneath it, reclaimingourdemocracy.com. You can use this website or the QR code to order the book. You can use it to join the Civic Courage mailing list. You can use it to let me know that you or a group you work with would be interested in hosting a book talk with me. I have 47 scheduled so far, and I'm up for doing more. So I'm going to take this down in a moment, and we're going to go to questions. Hopefully that's good enough, and people have been able to grab it. So thank you again for the work that you do and for being here this evening. And Naveed, I would love it if people, if they have a question, if they would come off of mute, introduce themselves, let me know where you're calling from, and then ask your question. And then we could do the shy ones at the end who want it read from chat. So anyone willing to come off of mute, introduce yourself, and ask your question? Peter, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, I hope it's remotely
You
relevant.
want to reintroduce yourself? And
Hi, my name's Peter Lima. I'm a musician and I live under the flight path at Stansted Airport. I've been working with results for anyway, before Sheila Davy, or just after Sheila Davy took us on a ride. My question is this: our son is going before the High Court shortly on charges of trespass and malicious damage, as he was on a demonstration against climate change. And he works with a group that are partly relevant to the idea of being part of a group. But the law in the UK has forbidden that he uses any kind of reference of climate change in his defense. So here we have a situation in the UK where the law actually prohibits advocacy. Any thoughts about that, Sam?
well, okay, that's I hadn't expected that particular. My bottom line is it goes back to like talking to my member of parliament, writing letters to the editor, meeting with the editor at the local paper, having them take it on. Really, it's the whole notion of the trim tab, where Buckminster Fuller said, if you want to turn an ocean liner, there's a huge rudder at the back that's hard to turn. Don't try and turn that. Find the trim tab, and then the rudder will turn, and then the whole ship will turn. He would say, with regard to the ship of state, don't try and turn the ship around. Don't even try and turn the rudder. Find the trim tab and turn that. So what are the trim tabs in this, Peter, in this circumstance? Would your member of parliament and others nearby be possible assistance? Would a letter to the editor, would a meeting with the editor be something that would be of use to raising this issue up, basically?
Fine. Well, our MP is a member of parliament, and I very much doubt that she would intervene.
Well, let me ask this. Have you met with her face to face in the last 12 months?
No.
Check it out then. We don't know. She might be really resistant, but we don't know for sure. There's one way to find out.
Well, she's voted against climate bills in her record. She
Right.
doesn't support that at all.
One of the chapters in the book is about a guy. His name is Jay Butera. And Jay Butera was a lone wolf, kind of working on his own, and he got people to sign like petitions, and a bill in the US Congress was killed in the Senate, essentially. And he decided that he was going to hand deliver a letter to each of the 100 Senate offices with the 400 or the 300 from their state who had signed his petition. And he went into one of the offices, gave them the letter. He went out into the hall and realized he had given them the wrong letter, and he walked back in. Less than a minute had passed and said, I've given you the wrong letter. This is the right one. Can I have the other one back? And the aide had to reach into the trash can to get the letter that he'd brought in a minute earlier. And Jay never gave up. And then over 3 years, he worked to get the first Republican to co-chair the House Climate Solutions Caucus, which was in fact a 3-year effort. I'm going to say one other thing, and then I'm going to go to the next question. One of the things he used, which is something I train people, if I'm working with a member of parliament who opposes my issue, I have people ask 3 questions. Question 1, we know you don't support this issue. What would it take to change your mind? Question 2, could you say more about that? Question 3, why do you think that is? And Jay asked that. What would it take to change your mind? The congressman said, well, if you could get the chambers of commerce on board, that's the business councils. And he did. Came back with letters from the heads of these 10 chambers of commerce. And the congressman said, well, if you could get the mayors on board. And he did. And he came back with letters of support from the mayors. But we know you don't support this issue. What would it take to change your mind? Listen for assignments. Could you say more about that? Why do you think that is? Okay, let's go with another question. We don't want to give all the answers to Peter. Who's got a question? Just raise your hand or speak up and unmute yourself and jump right in. Is that anyone?
Well, Richard, I introduce myself again. Richard
Go.
from North Barnet. I know in the United States you deal with domestic issues as well, obviously incredibly successfully. Now, as you know, we don't in the UK, and I've no idea how the funding works or this, that, and the other, but do you think we should be doing that, or do you think we should carry on?
I don't know. I have no idea, actually. I'm kind of agnostic. I don't know enough about what's going on in the UK and in terms of that. So it's yeah. My expertise is on grassroots empowerment, on empowering grassroots groups. And quite honestly, the extent to which that's seldom done or little done in the United States. Okay, who else?
Hi, Sam. It's Ricky again from Edinburgh. So this is really a question, but I just wanted to say I really appreciated what you said. And this actually might feed in a little bit to what Peter was saying. But I was really impressed with your analogy with either an arranged marriage or a romantic marriage. So if we go into visit our MP and they're not interested at all, maybe there's somebody in the office who is, or maybe they have a colleague who is, and you were talking about the kind of press office and stuff like that. And I've realized that you said, you were quoting somebody who said, I had to get rid of my fear of climate change and get rid of my fear that I wouldn't be listened to. And that
I had to center myself in love, releasing fear and centering in love. This is sacred and profound work.
You're telling me, I'm really impressed. That's great.
Yeah, that was a volunteer's words, Ellie Sparks. Yeah. Let me say one other thing to what you said. I go into my MP and they're not on board. They don't support my issue, right? One of the things that one of the things in the book is a discussion of the champion scale. My members opposed or neutral or supporter. In the US, a lot of people quit. Oh, they're a supporter. I'm done. No. Supporter, advocate, leader, champion.
Yeah.
And so when someone's opposed, one of the things I recommend that they do is, well, in the US, you can go to their website and to their news releases. Like a news release, they were proud of this, or they did that, or they were proud of that. And look for something that my member of parliament did that I liked. Now, they may have done 20 things and I liked only one of them. The other 19 I wasn't so thrilled with. But I look for something they did that I liked.
Yeah.
And I write a letter to the editor thanking them for that and hoping they bring that kind of leadership to my issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm publicly acknowledging their leadership on something they actually led on. And then I'm also urging them to bring that same kind of leadership to this poverty issue or whichever the issue you're lifting up. Yeah.
That's
and the
great.
other thing is the whole business about enrolling who's their religious leader or who's the local leader or who are others, who's a large employer in the constituency, who are other people of influence. If they came on board, maybe the listening from the MP would change. Jillian, is that?
Yeah, thanks.
Introduce yourself. Tell us where you are and.
Okay, I'm Jill Price. I'm formerly of the Stork Valley group, and now I'm on the online group because I've moved and I'm trying to get a handle on the new area.
What's the new area?
Oh, South London.
Okay.
I moved from Hertfordshire to North London to South London. So
okay, good.
And I'm a carer for my mother, who's 102.
Oh my.
I come from a background of working with people with learning difficulties and also behavioural issues, and we call your thing "catch them being good." We always say, look to see what they're doing that's good, and reward them for it.
Yes, acknowledge that.
It's
yes,
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my internet dropped out, and I think I missed something. I came in and you were talking about trim tabbing. Could you just say a bit about results? What results actually stands for? Because I'm very inspired by that.
Well, okay, so I don't know that it's used that much anymore.
No.
And I was a substitute teacher for 4.5 years while Results was being started. And in the United States, Eastern Airlines and Delta Airlines used to offer 21 flights for $649 if you did it in 21 days. And I was a substitute teacher. I would take a 3-week leave from substitute teaching and go on the road uh, over a 18-month period. I went to 105 cities. I didn't go 105 different cities. I kind of went to 52 twice. In other words, if I came to your community and we started a chapter, I came back 4 months later, kind of thing. So when I did go to 105 cities in 18 months, I didn't go to 105 different cities. I went to about 52 different cities. And where was I going with this? Oh, anyway, so leave us not pretend that things were like, we were making it up, including the acronym, which stands for Responsibility for Ending Starvation Using Legislation or Lobbying, Trim Tabbing, and Support, group support, not working alone, working with others, kind of thing. Yeah. So that's what it stood
Thanks.
for.
I think it still stands, and I'm sorry we've lost it, because I think
Okay.
trim tabbing is a wonderful
Oh,
concept,
yeah,
and it's what we're
absolutely. Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Leveraging and yeah.
Okay.
With a
What
long
can I-
enough lever, you can move the world. Yeah.
Okay, quick question. What was the third thing that you should ask your senator that wasn't in favour? Could
We
you
know
say
you don't
more about
support
that?
this
And what was
bill.
the third one?
Yes. Why do you think that is?
Thank you.
And so essentially, it's a listening exercise. It's not, I've come in and I'm going to talk to you. Now, of course, we want to be able to talk to them, but especially when it's opposed, we probably want to listen first and listen better. Anyway, who else? I just like Eastern offered 21 flights. If you did them in 20, I would get a Brit Rail pass in the mid 80s and just get on the train and notice how back then the trains came on time compared to the US. But anyway, anyone else have a question? Comment?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Aurora.
Yes,
Where are
hi.
you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, yeah, I also live in London. I actually work at Results. I'm the campaigns coordinator, so I do all of the grassroots support. So my question is, it just seems that nowadays it's become much more difficult to do this type of work
I love this
than,
question.
yeah,
Go.
and I mean, our most loyal campaigners are people that have been with Results for a couple of decades or more, and it just seems like the 80s was such a great time for this type of campaigning, and now it's not. And I wasn't born when Results started, but I like this type of campaigning. I started as a campaigner myself with Results, and I do other types of activism, but none is in like this. And there is also not really much funding for this type of work. So what was asked before about why this Results maybe not work on national issues. I just think like national or not national issues, it's really hard to find money for this type of work. So it just seems like funders are not interested in it. Maybe people are not interested in it. Everything is so fast. I don't know what's going on, but it's just like it feels like this type of it's the thing we're trying to crack. What's going on? How can we make it appealing?
I forgot what the quote was from Steve Jobs. Something like, I wouldn't ask people what they want. They have no idea what an iPhone would be. They wouldn't even know to be asking for it. Okay, so your brilliant question. I loved your question. So let me say a couple things about it. One of the ideas in the book is, well, wait a minute. If transformational advocacy is so powerful, why don't more organizations offer it? Why don't more organizations deliver it? And my basic point, and I said this on a results board call last night, the basic thing is, okay, I don't mean anyone in particular, the fear of staff of making big asks of volunteers. So for example, I'm going to be just really, really, really blunt. We have a lot of phenomenal people on this call, and some of whom have been in results for decades and might tell me that, well, I like it when it's online. I like the not getting together. I like not having to face to face. Anyway, so yeah, it's like people say to me, well, you know, young people, they just text, they don't make phone calls, and they don't meet. Yeah, I've got a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old. Yeah, you can text all you want. It doesn't make much difference. And somebody's got to be straight with people. And, you know, we see from the Results Fellows, which is 50 to 70, 18 to 35-year-olds every year, that people get lit up if they're given the chance. I was contacted last year by Citizens Climate Lobby and Friends Committee on National Legislation, and then also Results Australia. But these two groups that I'd coach, who said, because of COVID, we shrunk, chapters have shrunk, chapters have merged, chapters have disappeared. We need a back to basics on launching and rebuilding chapters. And so I did a 10-part series for Citizens Climate Lobby and a 10-part series for Friends Committee on National Legislation on back to basics, on launching or rebuilding chapters. And I was on a call Monday night with some of those. So my 10-part training got traded into a 5-part workshop, and they now meet monthly. And I was on a call on Monday night with some of those trainees they said, we just started a new group in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Fayetteville, Arkansas is not a large city. Well, it's a university town, and they've already had their first meeting. And I said, well, how many, this is like a decider for me. How many came to the first meeting after the launch? And I'm thinking 4, 5, 6, 24. We had 24 at the meeting after the launch, the first meeting after the launch. So, you know, here's all the people over here saying people don't want to do it anymore. It's hard to do it. The 80s were different. People are like, they'll do it online. And then there are people over here who are getting 24 at their first meeting after the launch in Fayetteville, not in Manhattan, in Fayetteville, Arkansas, kind of thing. So yeah, it's the fear of making big asks of volunteers has me not asking volunteers to get face to face with a member of Congress or write letters to the editor or see if they would build an inviting team of 5 to 10 people, so that if those 5 to 10 got inspired, they could invite others to a launch, and then going to a launch and making a big ask. Maybe we're going to stop here in terms of time. Yeah, all right, we're getting close. I'm doing a series. I've been invited to do a series for a democracy newsletter in the United States called The Fulcrum. It comes out Mondays through Fridays in the morning on email. And my first column was titled, with regard to political news, I can't get no satisfaction. And the second column comes out on Monday, and the title is Show Me How Big Your Brave Is. It's a Sarah Bareilles song, Brave. And I talked about, I was driving with my daughter, who was 15 at the time. And I said, Sophie, did she just say, show me how big your brave is? And I said, we need to ask that of ourselves and our nonprofits, how big their brave is. What is the next one? The next one is on All By Myself, Eric Carmen. Do you know that song? All by myself, don't want to be all myself. It's all about forming chapters instead of being all by myself. And the next one is on it's the Alicia Keys song, "We Are Here." I don't know if you know. We are here. We are here for all of us. We are here for all of us. That's why we are here. Why we are here. I don't know if you know that song, but that speaks to why. Know your why and share it. Why do you do what you do? Your story of self. Why are we here? Kind of thing. And the fifth one that I've just finished, I'm not going to, I don't think I'm going to do this one very well, but it's really coming off of Eva Cassidy. It was because of the UK that Eva Cassidy got known in the world. I don't know if anyone on this call has ever heard Eva Cassidy sing Fields of Gold or Over the Rainbow. This amazing, amazing singer who died at 33 of cancer before people who millions would come to love her, never ever heard of her when she died. And the first paragraph talks about 6 weeks before she died, there was a benefit concert for her. It was small because she was unknown, and she had taken extra morphine to get over the pain, and she had to be helped up onto the stage. And she sang one song at this benefit 6 weeks before she died. And the song she sang was "What a Wonderful World." And the question that I ask in this fifth piece is, you know, if only our politics had such grace, and if only our activism had such gratitude. And it then goes on from there. So anyway, sorry, Aurora, I got off on a tangent, but yeah, it's like there are going to be a lot of people who say it won't work. People don't want to do it anymore. And then there are going to be those people over there, not many, who are going to be just doing it because we got over the fear of. One last thing, I guess this is the end. You're going to love this or hate it. So you know the results format, write a letter to the editor, you look for an opening in an article to the issue you want to write about, and then you write a good letter and you write the editor. I've been doing a results letters to the editor format on the new edition of the book, but instead of writing the editor, I look for an opening to the ideas in the book, and then I write the columnist or the radio host or the producer. Before the book came out, and I had a team of book ambassadors, mostly in Results US and Citizens Climate Lobby, a couple. Before the book came out, we had written 370 journalists, quoting back to them something from their piece. We didn't just write them. We read their piece, listened to their interview, and wrote them about their piece and quoted their piece back to them. Now we've written 400 and I don't know what now, but when the book came out in January, we'd written 370, and we keep writing. 126 asked for an advance copy of the book, and 220 never wrote me back. And I wrote them multiple times. I wanted to make sure you saw this, just in case you missed this. And I called it, I was collecting no's. I was just so thrilled every time I collected a no, because I knew I was closer to a yes, because I needed to collect so many no's to get to some yeses. And so that's really, if I'm looking for a host in North London or a host near that's anywhere near the Stansford Airport, or maybe I was looking for a host in South London, I might have to talk to a lot of people who say, no, I couldn't get 5 or 10 together for an inviting team call. Well, could you get 2? Well, yeah, I could get 2. Okay, let's do 2 next week and see if the 3 of you could get 5 or 10 for an inviting team call. But I'm highly into the gear of collecting no's, whether it's from journalists or whether it's from potential hosts for results presentation or whatever. Give me some no's, bring it on. so I can find the needle in the haystack yeses that I'm looking for.
I'm going to jump in now because we have reached time. That last story about, I think, persistence is a great place to end. Sam, you've given us such an enormous amount of food for thought and inspiration. I don't really know what to say. The stuff around this work that we do being, you know, sacred and profound work. These are not words that we usually hear to describe activism, advocacy. And I know we're all going to go away and take those words in our own way and sort of use that to help inform our ongoing personal transformations. Sam, thank you so much.
Is this
and I'm
the
sure
British?
you'll all want to.
No, it's not the Brit. No, sorry, wrong flag.
Wrong flag. I'm sure everybody else will you know, will agree with me when I say thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation, and do check out Sam's website that he shared. And I hope this has been a useful and inspiring session for you. It so much has for me. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, everyone. I love what you do.